Good morning to all. For our resource person and friends from the other part of the globe, it is almost midnight, but happy to see you all. PGT Department of English and Research Center, St. Xavier's College for Women, Alava, is delighted to be in this meeting room with you all for the webinar organized in memory of our first head of the department, Professor Rebecca Grace. I now cordially invite Ms. Lindsay Joseph, Associate Professor of the Department, to deliver the welcome address. Lindsay, ma'am.
Thank you, Liz. A teacher affects eternity. A good teacher can inspire, hope, ignite the imagination, and instill a love of learning. Welcome one and all to Professor Rebecca Grace Memorial Webinar. Professor Rebecca Grace Thomas, or Mrs. Thomas as she was popularly known as, was the head of the Department of English at its inception. She was an epitome of grace and nobility and ideal teacher. I have had the good fortune to meet her personally a couple of times and was impressed by and nobility writ large upon her personality, clad in traditional Christian attire of I've heard from my senior colleagues that she was meticulous and dedicated and wow to her fellow teachers. I pay homage to her memories on this occasion. I felt to welcome the resource person for the day, Dr. Solomon Rees Nelson, Associate Professor in Trocaire College, Buffalo University in New York. It's a privilege to have him for leading today's webinar on the human and cyberpunk fiction. On behalf of the Postgraduate Department of English and Research Center, St. Xavier's College for Women, Alava, I extend a most cordial welcome to Dr. Solomon Rees Nelson. Outset, extend a hearty welcome to Dr. Sister Gigi Jonama Xavier, the principal of St. Xavier's Alava, who provides us with relentless motivation and support in all our endeavors. Welcome. We are very fortunate to have some of our retired faculty present here. They have been our most gentle guidance, have equipped us to take up challenges as opportunities. I extend a loving welcome to Jayalakshmi TC from the Department of English. Let me also extend to the faculty from other colleges and to our dear colleagues from other departments. I a sincere welcome to Dr. Lima Anthony, the head of the Postgraduate Department of English and Research Center, St. Xavier's for Women, Alava, and to my dear colleagues of the department, especially Dr. Lismeri Das and Srija, the coordinators of this webinar. Lastly, may I extend a warm welcome to all the students. I cordially welcome each one of you to this session. Thank you all.
Thank you, Lindsay, ma'am. Now I call upon our principal, Reverend Dr. Gigi Jonama Xavier, to deliver the presidential address. Sister.
Good morning, everyone. It gives me immense pleasure to be part of Professor Rebecca Grace Memorial Webinar organized by the Department of English. Professor Rebecca Grace, the first head of the department, was a visionary who set high standards in education and discipline, which we strive to follow. I congratulate the head, organizers, and the whole department of the wonderful coordination. The department has always taken care to organize the lectures on relevant, interesting topics by renowned academics and experts. It is no different this time. We are all eagerly waiting to listen to Dr. Solomon Rees Nelson on cyberpunk fiction. On behalf of entire Severian family, I cordially welcome you, sir, to this webinar. I wish all of you a fruitful session. Thank you.
Thank you, sister. Now I call upon Ms. V. Srija to introduce our resource person formally. Srija.
Hi, ma'am. Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
Dr. Solomon Rees Nelson is Associate Professor of English at Trocaire College, Buffalo, New York. His teaching interests include areas like post-colonial studies, film and culture, research skills, developmental English, Native American writings, etc., to name a few. He was awarded PhD by Pondicherry University for the thesis titled The Decolonization of English in and Through Post-Colonial Fiction, a Select Study. And he has to his credit several publications in renowned journals. And he's currently working on a book-length fictional narrative on the cultural politics of Christianity and colonization in post-globalized world. Happy to have you amongst us, sir. Looking forward to the session.
Thank you, Srija. Thank you, Srija. Solomon? Yes, please.
Yes. All right, good morning, everyone, and hope the audio is okay, right? Can you hear me?
Yes, you're audible,
right.
Yes.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, and thanks for all the kind words that was said. It's an honor. It's an honor to be here as part of this lecture series here, and I have my roots in India. You know, I'm from Salem, in Tamil Nadu. I grew up there and did my studies there in India. So, and I worked in Bangalore for a year, Christ University, and I stayed very close to the campus there. And you know, Christ University is run by the CMA fathers, so there's a lot of students from Kerala. And you have these awesome Kerala restaurants all around the place. And I stayed there for a year and ate all 3 meals outside in these restaurants. And wow, those parota and those beef curry, that's divine, you know, out of the world. And that's what I miss the most about India, besides, of course, family and friends. So this morning, I want to talk to you about cyberpunk and with specific focus on the human experiment. And I hope it's going to be useful to you at some point, at some level in your literary pursuit. And let's see, you know, what we can do here. And I also want to give a disclaimer that I'm trying to present here, so just give me a second. Yeah, got it. All right. So the disclaimer is this is how I talk, okay? And it's a kind of a masala mix, I would say, between my post-colonial consciousness and my Indian Tamil cultural roots. And of course, my existential predicament here. So just give it some time and it'll grow on you. All right. So let's get into the topic, the human experiment and cyberpunk fiction. Now we live in strange times and this is not normal. These are strange times. As you can see in this picture on the left, that's Times Square, the famous 42nd Street. Full of activity, people going and cabs honking at you, and that's the normal. The one on the right side is the post shutdown, or during the shutdown, after the shutdown. Same street, but an eerie-looking Times Square. New York has been shut down. Tourists have been asked to stay away. It's hard to see people. And this is not normal. These are strange occurrences. But then we hear people saying that, welcome to the new normal. This is how it's going to be, in the near future. And somehow human beings have become, we are not just afraid of a virus, we have become the metaphor.
Sorry,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Can you press it again? Because, yes, now it was not visible, now it's visible. I hope for the participants also.
Yeah, it's visible now, yes.
Yes. Okay, continue.
Good?
Yes, it is.
All right. Okay. So people say this is the new normal. And they want us to get used to this new environment where empty streets.
Again.
You still having problems?
Yeah.
It has gone again, sir. Yeah. Yes.
Is it okay now? I'll keep it that way.
Yes.
Let's see what happens.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about it. Okay.
Yes.
Is it good?
It is visible now, yes.
All right. Okay. So this is not something new. Like if you are a student of science fiction, we are used to this virus attacking and aliens coming and cities getting wiped out, humanity, civilizations getting wiped out. So these are not new to science fiction readers. You can see The Last Man, that's a science fiction that was written by Mary Shelley all the way, back in the 18th century. So this is not something new for science fiction writers. And even though it's very new for us living through a pandemic. And the term cyberpunk itself was first appeared in a short story by Bruce Bethke in 1983. So this is the written history of the term cyberpunk. If it is written history, then we can safely assume that this word should have been in practice in an oral form at some level in those fanzines, culture. So people should have used these terms before 1983, but somewhere in the 1980s, that's when we come to find out there is this cultural movement. There is this literary movement called cyberpunk. And you can see it peaked from the mid-80s and somehow started to kind of veer off from the 90s onwards. We will look at some of the cultural influences as to why those things happened. But this is very much a 1980 product. And students of literature, we always know that there is a reason why things happen. Things don't happen accidentally. And this was a breakaway from a typical mainstream science fiction. Now, in a mainstream science fiction, starting with Jules Verne, H.G. Wells, and Isaac Asimov, and all those writers, what we call sci-fi writers, you can see a very typical scenario. They're using their scientific imagination, using the cultural influences that was available to them, and they talked about robots and spaceships and aliens. H.G. Wells has a novel where the Martians coming and invading the world and people are running and fighting. So there is this conflict between the machines or the robots or the aliens versus the human beings. That's the world, that's a civilization. That's a typical sci-fi for you. But then cyberpunk was a breakaway from this mainstream sci-fi. And in an article in the Whole Earth Review in 1989, once again, when cyberpunk was at its peak of its success or popularity. And this is what they say. Bill Gibson, a very, very important name, a prominent name in cyberpunk genre. So Bill Gibson and other cyberpunk allies spin out distinctive scenarios about gritty, not too distant futures made of washed up computer cowboys, Pacific Rim mafias, ganja smoking software hustlers, genetic surgeons, multinational corporations located in dilapidated city-states, rampant guerrilla information undergrounds, contraband brain implants. So this is what that cyberpunk novel was all about. It was not something pleasant. It was not romantic. It was not this traditional sci-fi where we have this stuff called regular human beings living their normal human lives. But this was a little different. This was morbid. This was dark. This talked about the low life, the hustlers, people living in the dark alleys, doing the illegal stuff, the ganja smoking and mafias, washed up computer boys, so to speak, low lives. So this is what these novels were about. And this was a very distinct breakaway from our mainstream sci-fi. And the influences for this is, and you and I, students of literature, we know, we always ask this question. Now, what were the socio-political, cultural influences that inspired a writer to write what they write? Nothing happens in a vacuum. We know that. I always tell students, just picking on Shakespeare. It's so easy to pick on Shakespeare because he's written so much. And this man has written 37 plays and hundreds of poems. One of the greatest, if not the greatest, literary genius who had this brilliant mind, wealth of imagination. He's written on all kinds of topics. You name it: psychology, philosophy, war, politics, religion. He has it. A masterful brain, a masterful composition. But you wonder, when you look at Shakespeare's writings, why didn't the great Shakespeare write a scientific play? Why didn't he write about Martians coming and invading? Why didn't he write about robotics? Why didn't he write about, androids? He had imagination. He's known for his imagination. But even the great Shakespeare is limited by the time and place and the culture in which he lived. And that is so important to understand because, we make a big deal about free thinking. And I am a little skeptical about free thinking, even though it's, it's good to indulge in this kind of free thinking. We are still very much a product of our culture. In other words, we cannot think, or it's very difficult to think outside our cultural norms, cultural boundaries. It makes us uncomfortable. It makes us vulnerable. Sometimes it threatens who we are as individuals, our belief system, our values. So as you can see, even the Shakespeare, great Shakespeare was limited by his influences because science was almost non-existent in the time he lived. They were debating which was the center of the universe. Was Earth the center or the sun? They were debating about these things. Science was very early, in his days, and poor Shakespeare has no, imagination to kind of fictionalize a story about cyborgs and androids and Martians, extraterrestrial creatures coming in, invading the world. We see none of that in Shakespeare's writings. So coming back to this topic, the influences for cyberpunk writers, what made these writers different? What made them to write what they wrote? And as you can see, these writers grew up reading traditional sci-fi writers. So they lived in this scientific world, scientific thinking where science and technology was booming in the 70s and 80s. And they lived in that time. They saw with their very eyes what was happening, the revolution that was happening in the field of science and technology. And then there's also this philosophical undergird to whatever we are as human beings. And that is given by fictional writers, postmodern writers like Pynchon and Don DeLillo, Anthony Burgess. All these writers, we classify them as postmodern writers who kind of came onto the scene the 60s onward, 60s and 70s. They had a little break away from the traditional or modern, what we call a traditional way of living life. They question autonomy, they question society, they question rules, they question all major institutions, and they threw caution to the wind. And it was little chaotic, it was little pessimistic, and there was no values. And they were also helped by the existential philosophy, by Sartre and Nietzsche and Camus and Kafka. So these are writers who kind of explored what it means to be human beings. Is there really meaning in our human life? And why do we do what we do? At the end of the day, we're all going to die. So what does it matter? So they began to question all on these terms, and that's the whole existential, very, very pessimistic, very, very nihilistic. There is no hope. It's very morbid, and so that's the cultural climate under which these cyberpunk writers were groomed. And then they also were helped by the Gothic tradition. I don't know if you're into music, but if you're into music, you can see in goth metal and heavy metal and typical rock, experimental rock, and stuff like that, heavily borrowing from the Gothic tradition. Once again, it's disturbing. It is dark. It is depressing. So that's sort of thing. That sort of things appealed to these writers. And of course, we also have the cyber culture coming into vogue thanks to the internet, and that opened up their imagination. Now, all of a sudden, you can get onto the internet and be somebody else. Nobody needs to know who you are. Your real identity is questioned. You don't have to reveal who you are as a person, and you can interact with somebody who you cannot see. This was something new, and interact in a much more intimate level, visually speaking. And so this opened up all kinds of possibilities, especially for our cyberpunk writers, and they began to explore these avenues. And then what we have is the birth of cyberpunk. So the word cyberpunk, you can see there's a fusion of two words that are brought together. And the first one is cyber. When I say cyber, that word cyber is more to do with cybernetics than robotics. And we discussed the mainstream sci-fi writers, they dealt with robots, but then cyberpunk writers, they deal with cybernetics. Now, what is cybernetics? Cybernetics is a fusion of the organic and the artificial. Cybernetics is a fusion of the man-machine system. It is not man versus machine. It is not robots versus civilization. It is not Martians versus Earthlings. But it is this fusion where man becomes the machine. At some point, at some level, we become the machine, or we are fused into this hybrid individual, both organic as well as artificial. And this is kind of thanks to science and technology in the 80s. And this was getting popular. And they also have a term, this was in the 90s, neural decoding. This hit the news, and this man lost both his arms. And they fixed, this is not a prosthetic arm, which is very common. Prosthetic arm is very common, but this is more cybernetic in a sense, like this man can control his arms, his hands, by using his brain. So he can think, I have to pick up an object, and his hand will cooperate just like our natural hand. This was something new. This was groundbreaking. It's no longer, it's just a hand for cosmetic reason. Because very often prosthetic is for cosmetic reason. But this is more like an extension of a human hand. And they say like they were able to codify the neural decoding is the neural signals are decoded by the surgically implanted chip in his brain. So he can think, and then his hands would work just like his natural legs. And he can pick up stuff, he can do extraordinary things, it seems. And we've also read news in the news there where the prosthetic legs, similar cybernetic legs, and they make runners to run fast, even faster than the other runners, who have the natural legs. And that's pretty interesting. So cybernetics is a fusion of man and the machine. Man becomes the machine, or machine becomes part of humanity at some level. To what extent does the machine influence humanity is the question cyberpunk writers ask. And it opens up all kinds of interesting avenues. Take a look at this quote by Bruce Sterling. This is another cyberpunk critic. And this is what he says: anything that can be done to a rat can be done to a human being. Lab rats. And we can do most anything to rats. This is a hard thing to think about, but it is the truth. It won't go away because we cover our eyes. This is cyberpunk, where human beings are just like lab rats, where science has taken over. Technology has become so advanced that we cannot ignore. You just cannot. I'll give you a simple example. The smartphones. The smartphones is something new. It's recent. But then if you don't have a smartphone, you almost feel like you are left out, from this cultural race that everybody has a smartphone, a phone that is faster. It has all these cool, gadgets, the memory space, and all kinds of things that can be done by a smartphone. That's what he's talking about. And where science is no longer an option. It is not an option for you to choose. It has become part of our lives. We have no choice now. And he says you can either cover your eyes and say that I don't want to do anything to do with this, or just face the reality. And for him, this is cyberpunk, the world of cybernetics. We live in this world of cybernetics. And this is a famous movie. I'm sure many of you would have watched this, Blade Runner. Rachel is a cyborg, even though she looks real, and she moves and talks like a real human being. If you watch the movie, you'll know it. Rachel is a replicant. She is a product of she came from a scientific lab where somebody designed her, including her thinking capabilities. She can feel, she can talk, she can smoke, she can eat. And in the movie, she questions, why am I not a human being? Because even though I do all these human functions, still I'm not a human being. My memory has been corrupted. That's what she says in this. It's a very sad film, but beautiful film. And this was based on a novel, a cyberpunk novel by Philip Dick, Do Sheep Dream of Androids? And so that's where we get this movie from. It's a fusion, organic and artificial, coming together to form a new kind of identity. It's not far-fetched, as you know. This is Arnold Schwarzenegger in Terminator. He's not a machine. He is part human, part machine. Underneath the machine, outside you can see a human face. He looks like human, he moves like a human being, but underneath he's a machine. And he cannot feel, he cannot cry. He asked this famous thing, why do people cry? He can understand. So interesting, that's what cybernetics does, where it explores this avenue where man becomes the machine. Man no longer differentiates himself or herself from the machines. We are the machines. It's a new kind of a machine, which is organic. It's a hybrid individual. And that's the first part of the cybernetics. And then the second part of the word cyberpunk, the word punk. And that's another very interesting cultural factor here. Now, this word, the punk, comes to us from, once again, the 70s and 80s. it was a movement, it's a cultural movement that was popularized by the Rastafaris in England, the Black Britons. These are West Indian immigrants who came to England seeking a better life, but they got disillusioned with the politics and the racism and the economic exploitation. So they were forced to live in ghettos, the outskirts of the cities there. And they formed a powerful underground movement there, what we call Rastafari movement. And it has influenced the fashion industry, it has influenced the music culture, the whole reggae, Buffalo Soldier by Bob Marley, or recently there's a poet called Benjamin Zephaniah who also belongs to this Rastafari movement. So this was a cultural movement, an underground cultural movement that was popularized in England. And it's not just the music with their lyrics, profanity, and very simple rhythmic patterns and political, very overt political messages, but they also kind of embraced certain cultural connotations, which was borrowed from probably, it's kind of the hippie culture evolved into the punk subculture. And you can see the matted hair, the dreadlocks, and the drop-down pants, all kinds of weird tattoos. They have a whole arm sleeves, covered in tattoos, and appropriated dangerous symbols like swastika has been reappropriated by this group. So they live on the edge, and so that's what this punk subculture refers to. And the difference between a hippie and a punk, because hippies are also what you call social rebels. They resisted, they revolted against the mainstream society in the 60s and the 70s. And so the difference between a hippie and a punk would be more generational. So you have a hippie father and a punk son. It's not the other way around. You'll never have a punk father and a hippie son, all right? It's always a hippie father and a punk son, because the difference was more generational. The hippies were kind of defined by this beautiful looking rock stars, blonde hair, loose hair, bare-chested, and rock and roll and rock music, and they enjoy tree hugging lifestyle. So that was more of the hippie lifestyle. But the punks were they kind of took it to the next level, where they also took out the goth, influenced by the goth, heavy metal, death metal in their music. So it is a little morbid, it is dark, it's depressing. They're known for their illegal activities like smoking. Drugs is big in this community. They don't care for rules. They want to break every rules. They kind of question the status quo. And that's who they are. And somehow cyberpunk found an affinity with the punk subculture. Interesting. Cybernetics and the punk subculture. What's the fascinating thing about is this: cybernetics is high tech. Punks is the low life. Look at the contradiction. The low life's embracing high tech, all right? And it's a beautiful contradiction, but that's what gives them the power to challenge. They don't have to live by any rules. They want to chart their own path and blaze their own trail. So what we have is a new kind of body, a new kind of humanity, or humanity has been redefined or reimagined. On your left is the famous sculpture from Greek mythology. What's his name? Hercules. Sorry, Hercules, and it's in France. The famous Louvre museum has this. So we know Hercules was kind of a superhuman being. He's super strong. He's a superhero. And even as a baby, he was able to strangle 2 snakes. Babies shouldn't be able to do that, all right? But that's what mythology does. Mythology enhances human beings. It amplifies human ability using their imagination. So we have all these beautiful mythological figures On the right is my favorite, all-time favorite film, Troy, and he is Achilles, played by Brad Pitt. So, you know, Achilles is once again gifted. Nobody can stand against him in a battlefield. Exceptionally powerful warrior, unbeatable warrior. So we have these superhuman warriors, and when it comes to women, they are beautiful, not just not ordinary human beings. Because you and I, we are boring. There is nothing spectacular about us. But mythological heroes, either it amplifies or diminishes. We have dwarves and goblins and all kinds of weird individuals. The normal human beings are boring. So mythology uses imagination to enhance human being. And this is where, I mean, Cyberpunk brings technology and mythology together. And the word here, the term here is oxymoronic undecidability by Timo Sivonen. That's the word he uses. What is oxymoronic? I mean, if you look at carefully here, science and technology is all about rational thinking, scientific thinking. It has to make sense scientifically. It marked the end of superstition. It marked the end of mythological imagination, and that's what even Michel Foucault says. The entire episteme of Western culture, you know, the scientific thinking, scientific knowledge and technology, it was a clear demarcation. A line was drawn between mythological imagination, where people believed in all those make-believe stories, as opposed to a scientific world where we don't believe in any of those old make-believe world. We want to be, everything has to be scientifically proved. If it is not being able to prove in a lab, if you can't prove it in a lab, then we don't believe that. That's scientific thinking. We question. It's kind of a rational thinking. But then what Cyberpunk does is it brings technology and mythology together. And that's why it's oxymoronic undecidability. It shouldn't be doing it because science is opposed. It's an antonym of mythology. But in Cyberpunk, we have this techno bodies. This is a famous scene from Matrix, from the film Matrix, written by Wachowski brothers in the 90s, extremely popular. I highly recommend if you haven't watched it. It's a trilogy, and this is the first part. Neo, played by Keanu Reeves, and he defies gravity. That's what technology does. He looks like a human being, but if you watch the film, you'll know that his body has been re-engineered. Now he is more a machine than a human being. And you can see how he's able to stop the bullets. Not just dodge them. Of course, he even dodges bullets, but he's able to stop the bullets. That's how powerful he is. Once again, a superhero. Just like a mythological hero, he is a technological hero. Interestingly, mythology and technology is obsessed with human body. At the root of it, we are the same. We all have the same, obsession with human bodies. How can we make myself stronger, wiser, smarter, faster? Mythology used imagination to come up with fictional characters. Technology uses science and technology once again to enhance the human beings. Organic. What is organic is weak. But then science and technology opens up endless possibilities where we become an enhanced human being. Now, you might be wondering, well, what's the big deal? When I was growing up, I was a big fan of Rajnikanth. He has done these things in his movies, from the 80s onwards. So what's the big deal? What's the difference between Neo stopping the bullets and Rajni stopping a bullet, or Rajni, kicking 20 people to dust? What's the difference? We are used to, many Indian films, have this kind of superheroes. And the difference is science. Rajnikanth, he has the image, the screen image where he is supposed to do these things, and that's what makes him a superhero. A man with no muscles is able to beat 20 people. A man with no hair is known for his hair on screen. That's this image, a superhero image. He's a superstar. So, only superstars can do those things. We excuse him. We kind of go with the flow. We don't question, like, how is he, how can he do this? We don't question that. We know, oh, Rajnikanth should be able to do it. There is no science involved. But then in Cyberpunk, it is because of science. It is scientifically enhanced body. It's not normal. Not everybody can do these things. Neo can do this because he's an enhanced human being. So that's what a cyborg is. Look at the definition of cyborg by Graham Mentor. Anyone with an artificial organ, limb, or supplement, like a pacemaker. Anyone reprogrammed to resist diseases or drugged to think, behave, feel better is technically a cyborg. I'll read it again. It's very important and disturbing as well. Anyone with an artificial organ, limb, or supplement like a pacemaker, heart, very important vital organ, but now that is controlled by a pacemaker. Anyone reprogrammed to resist diseases. Have you taken your flu shot? Have you been immunized in the past? Welcome to the club. You are a cyborg. It's a pretty disturbing statement here, but that's what they are getting at, that we are not natural. We have gone past that natural realm long before. We just haven't been thinking on those lines. But that's what cyberpunk writers, they kind of stretch our imagination there. They want us to go there. They want us to question our humanity, our hybrid subjectivity. So we are technically a cyborg, many of us, if not all of us. So this is another technique in cybernetics. It's called transmigration. Hans Moravich is a German computer roboticist and computer engineer, and he is working on this. He still believes this, that our human brain can be controlled by computers. Think of that. Think of that. Our human brain can be controlled by a computer. So if you want to learn a new language, say for example, tomorrow you want to learn French, all you got to do is to insert, learn French disk, or you just download this program into the software and it automatically uploads to your brain. And now you can speak a new language. And that's exactly what happens in the movie. This is from the movie Matrix once again. Neo is a hacker, but he's being taught. They're uploading this file where Morpheus and Neo, they're going to do jujutsu, kind of martial arts. He doesn't know martial arts, but just like that, they upload a program and now he knows. So that's the program, transmigration. What if your brain can be controlled by a computer? How will that be? You'll become much smarter than other human beings. You can think faster. You can do a lot of wonderful things. And that's what they are exploring. And the term is transmigration. This is not something far-fetched. BMI, brain-machine interfaces. Mark Zuckerberg, the guy, with all the founder of Facebook, look at what he says. Today, when we share our vacation experiences, we upload photos and videos. But with BMIs, I can share my full sensory and emotional vacation experience with my friends and family. So if they insert this chip onto your brain, now your friends can experience what you experienced while you were on your vacation, not just see photos, not even just the 3D pictures, what we see on the VR headsets. It's more than that. The sensory impressions, the full sensory impressions, they are able to transfer it using this chip, this computer chip in our brain. So this is frightening. And if you go deeper, there is no play acting anymore. If this were to happen, we connect at a face value level. You and I will say hi, or we just wave at each other. We know our names. We are friends on Facebook, but we stop there. But if you have this kind of a chip where the other person get into your mind, know what you're thinking, come to think of it, your thoughts, your thought life is the most intimate thing about you. It's the most personal space. But now That is not personal anymore. Just like what Facebook has done. Our families are not, our family room is not personal anymore. The entire world can see if you post a picture, you know. So the personal and the public, the boundaries are the blur. And that's exactly what's going to happen. Like if, you know, this becomes a reality down the road. So where somebody can gain access to your mind and see who you are as a person, your deepest longing, your hurts, your vulnerability, and all those things, it's even frightening to think about. Things have changed. Now we talk about virtual reality. We don't have reality or realism. Some of us, you know, we like realism when we watch movies. That's why people don't like Rajni films, because, come on, it's not real. This guy cannot fight, you know, but he's able to beat an entire village. So we question realism, but when it comes to cyberpunk fiction, we don't talk about realism anymore. It's a given. You know, we cannot buy into this setup where these things are possible, where we have this mytho bodies and techno bodies coming together. And virtual reality is a concept where reality is simulated. Reality is simulated through computer programs. And this is if you're an NBA fan. I was watching an NBA game just before coming here, just to keep myself awake. And the finals are happening, by the way. And this is Nikola Jokic, and from Denver Nuggets, is an NBA team. And he is interviewing this lady. If you look at the picture, she looks so real, but she's not real. It's a hologram. You know, because if you know NBA, how it's happening, the entire players, all the players have been quarantined in a bubble. So nobody can go in or out. So what they did is they brought in this reporter outside the bubble using technology and make it look as if she was sitting right in front of Jokic and she was interviewing him. Awesome. Endless possibilities of realities. This virtual reality. So cyberpunk kind of questions what is real. All right, it forces us to go where we didn't go before, and we don't talk about reality. We talk about virtual reality, and when it comes to virtual reality, everything is different now. Relationships are redefined. If you and I cannot talk face to face, if you and I cannot know who we are as a person, then what does it do to a relationship? Online communities, the word community has been redefined. We don't have to be together in the same room or in the same building to form a community, or to live. We don't have to live in the same, you know, zip code, or in the same apartment complex, or in the same locality, you know, to form a community. That's what community meant, originally speaking. But now we have online communities. People from across the world can be in your online community, you know, because of this internet culture. So humanize the digital, digitize the human. There is this boundaries blur between the digital and the human. Families are redefined. Father, mother, you know, everything is redefined. The purpose of the nuclear unit of a family, the purpose of a family, the function of a family, everything is redefined, reconceptualized in cyberpunk. And even the whole self, who am I, right? On a cyberspace, I am not what I am. I don't have to be who I am. Ethnically, racially, sexually, I don't have to be who I am. I can change. I can masquerade as somebody else, invent a new name. It's a dangerous and scary thought, but that's what cyberpunk is. And humans and machines will be effectively merged, since differences in appearance will be meaningless, as bodies will essentially become fashion accessories. So when you think about a cybernetics, a cyborg, if you can think and feel and behave like a human being, then it doesn't matter whether you're a machine or a human being. This is the new self. And what you look or how you look, what you have, they become fashion accessories. That's by Catherine Hales. Another very scary thought. Time is running. Cyberpunk and dystopia. Somehow you find a lot of dystopic elements in cyberpunk fiction. it's a very post-apocalyptic society, and it's always set in the future, and it's dark, it's depressing, it's morbid. There is no hope, and it's emotionally draining. But at some level, it's a future that the imagined future can become a reality, and that's what we fear. And the future is characterized by the mechanization, and there is alienation between the mainstream capitalists and people who don't enjoy those social privileges, and who are forced to live on the margins, who are forced to form their own groups, who are forced to make their own rules in order to survive. And the goal of the cyberpunk hero is to survive, just to navigate these spaces, navigate these power struggles within the society, and they do it their own way. They have their technological knowledge, and they hack. And I don't know if you know it. Hacking is a big thing. I took a training in cybersecurity recently, and they said hacking is a $3 trillion industry, it seems. Just imagine, $3 trillion industry. And it's so easy to get rich if you know what you're doing. And there are so many people out there working in gangs, and it's a very organized crime. And hospital records are, entire software system is hacked. University system is hacked. Banking, the entire bank software, is hacked. It's a big problem. It's a big problem, and these are the people, and they found a way to make money. They found a way to survive, and this is their way of taking revenge on capitalism. So I will stop here, and there is more. If you want to kind of start reading on cyberpunk fiction, here are some recommendations. Very, very basic. William Gibson, Bruce Sterling, Rudy Rucker, Pat Cardigan, Kurt Vonnegut, Neil Stevenson. These are some famous novelists who kind of propelled this whole movement called cyberpunk. And where does it go in the future? This is a new game that's coming in November, Cyberpunk 2077. The same guy who played Matrix is in this video game. It's getting released in PS4 and 5, and also Xbox, where you can control V. That's his name. So cyberpunk is not going anywhere. Things are, the future. It's the world of science and technology. It's going to redefine itself, reinvent itself. So scary, but something to think about. And I will stop here, and I'll be happy to answer any questions if you might have.
Thank you, Solomon. It was really interesting. The talk has touched upon the virtual world taking over the real world, the fluid identities which are created as part of cyberpunk. And I feel today, where in this world where gender is questioned, defined, and redefined, the whole idea of cyberpunk becomes very important. And when I was Googling the term, I also came up on the Cyberpunk 2077, where you can really create your identity or gender. That is what I read, and it was really interesting. At the same time, as it's open for discussion, if you have any questions, please unmute yourselves or please type it in the chat box. And I think you must have read about Sophia, the humanoid robot.
Yep.
So that was, so that was again a question of humanoids taking over the human world.
Yes, yeah. I mean, this is, I think this is where cyberpunk is
what
little.
Do you think,
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, you are
I
clear.
can hear you.
Yes, sir, we
Go
can
on,
hear you.
please.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, we very often we bring in the ethical values from our world, the reality that we live. We bring our own cultural realities to cyberpunk, but this is a new world that they have created. This is an reimagined world where anything is possible, and the humanoids, the experimentation that happens in the field of science and technology, biotech, genetic engineering. A lot of times people say that they are inspired by science fiction. So what happens in labs, what happens in the discussion boardrooms are generally, what they've read, in sci-fi fiction. And because these writers, they imagine the possibility of human brain being controlled by a machine. That technology is not here it's not here, but they are working on it. What if, the big question is, what if man becomes the machine? What if man is no longer organic? We are not just a lump of clay anymore. There is this huge potential to enhance ourselves. So is this right or wrong? They don't care. I mean, they are fascinated by what science can do. And it's a risk for us. We are little, come on, guys, slow down, it's difficult to catch up, slow down, but things are not slowing down. It's a rat race. And I was kind of forced to think, what if they're able to genetically modify a race that is superior, that is stronger, that is faster, that is smarter? What if some country has this technology where they are able to create this super race, super human beings? What's going to happen to the others, in this rat race of life? So where do we draw the line? Who should draw the line? So these are existential questions for philosophers and people like us to debate in classrooms, but they're not worried about this. These are scientists, and they are ruthless. And in fiction, these are writers with wild imagination. They revel in these kind of situations. They don't have morality. They don't have the right and wrong that you and I will have. They want to break all these barriers. Remember the punk subculture? That's what they are. They want to question the status quo. They want to live in the margins. It's not, that they want to infiltrate the mainstream. No, that's their domain. They want to live in the dark corridors of cyberspace and do these illegal activities, break the rules, bend the rules, and see how far they can go without destroying themselves. So this is a dangerous thing, but sadly, it's a reality at some level.
Questions. Shall I read them out? Thank you.
Yeah.
There are a couple of questions. There is Mr. Alvin Alexander asking, we may never resolve the ethical issues involved in man becoming machine. But what are the possibilities of a vice versa phenomenon, as in the movie Bicentennial Man, machine becoming man?
It's a fusion. You no longer see this difference between man and machine. There is no versus. There is no man and the machine. It is the man-machine fusion. That's organic. Machine is part of us. We become the machine. So once again, the interesting thought is this. How much humanity is lost when we talk about the fusion, the hybrid self? How much humanity is lost in the process? Or what makes us human? Is it just to act human? Is it, we talked about the Blade Runner, where a machine should not be able to cry. A machine should not be able to feel pain and grief and sadness. But then it's the privilege of human beings to feel, pain and sadness and grief and joy. But is that what makes us human beings? If a machine ultimately is able to feel and think and have this kind of human feelings, then how do we say that's not a human being? So that's what Kathleen Hayes' quote becomes very powerful. The moment we became post-human, she talks about post-human, where we cannot draw the line between man and the machine. It's a future self. It's a hybrid individual where man and the machine, maybe 75% machine and 25% humanity, or 75% humanity and 25% machine. We don't know, depending on the situation, depending on the need. There can be endless varieties. We don't bring in ethical issues. Who am I to answer whether it is right or wrong? It's going to happen anyway if they want to do it. And so, again, it's a little imaginative exercise. It's a stretch of imagination, but that's what cyberpunk deals in.
Okay, thank you. There's another question, and there's also a comment. Interesting talk, thank you. That is Silan Amos. I have a question related to the definition of cybernetics. Doesn't wearing spectacles technically make you a cyborg? Also, sports persons who use drugs to enhance performance, could they be termed as cyborgs too?
Absolutely, absolutely. Like anything that you make to enhance yourself. I cannot see, and therefore I have this mechanical device. Now, I mean, spectacles is different. Think about contact lens. If you are wearing contact, then yes. And now I was kind of reading up on this. There was an article, 7 ways cybernetics is going to influence humanity in the next 30 years. And somebody is researching on a kind of a contact lens that can take pictures. So now, it's not just using contact lens to see, but contact lens can take pictures and share simultaneously with your friends. So that's a different level. And absolutely, the sportsman taking, hormone immunization, all those things. Like that's what, it's a scary thought. Most of us here, or many of us, have been immunized, have taken our flu shots. We are waiting for a vaccine for COVID. So, and according to this definition, we are cyborgs. We have lost our humanity at some level.
Okay. Okay, thank you. There's Dr. Anjana Shankar asking, could you relate cyberpunk fiction with transhumanism?
Absolutely. Yeah, transhuman, post-human, these are evolutionary stages. Very often people use one against the other or one with the other. A transhuman is more biological. What can science do biologically to enhance ourselves? They don't focus more on data sciences and information technology. They just focus on the same process, enhanced human being. And post-humanism, once again, biological. It also brings in this philosophical discussion to the matter. So transhuman, post-human, these are evolutionary stages, and human, transhuman, and post-human. That's how I see it in the evolutionary scale. But it is very much part of a discussion. Once again, I told you it's a philosophical discussion that you and I will be talking and will be reading. There are endless papers, and also just wanted to highlight one more thing. If you are a research scholar looking for a research project, research article, research topic, this could be an interesting field to explore. As you talked about feminism, cyberpunk feminism hasn't been explored much, at least to my knowledge. So that is also something that you can explore. You don't have to confine to your gender stereotypes, gender categories. It kind of opens you up to all kinds of possibilities. And that's where transhuman comes in. Woman doesn't have to be a woman. And we didn't even get into the topic of sexuality. That's another interesting topic in literature. In cyberpunk, with their imagination, they go to all kinds of extremes with this. And so I will leave it to you to dig up and enrich yourselves.
Okay, thank you. There is Anju Susan George asking, could you also speak about disability and cyberpunk fiction?
Yeah, absolutely. This is, once again, this is where you think the positive side of cyberpunk, cybernetics, where when you bring in this artificial, artificiality or science and technology to enhance our disability, whatever that is. Now, we kind of saw the picture about the man, doesn't, without the arms. Now he's able to outperform a man with natural hands. And that is something, it kind of empowers you in that sense. But then I also want to touch on how, the neural, the chip that's surgically implanted, it can make us more empathetic. If you can connect with the person at an emotional level and touch their brain, see what they are feeling and relive their experience, it can make you more empathetic. That's what research says. And they also say virtual reality. What if they can simulate our life 10 years down the road? And will I change? Will I make some changes that I need to make in my life if I know how I'm going to be 10 years from now? So these are some interesting avenues that Cyberpunk opens up. And definitely, these are the positive sides of Cyberpunk. And yeah.
Thank you. There is, for the participants, there is the feedback link posted in the chat box. Please fill it for your e-certificate. So you talked about 10 years, but there is another question from Dr. KV Surendran. Where are we going to be, say, after 50 years from now, from Cyberpunk 2?
I mean, that's what I say. It is futuristic. It is futuristic. There is no way of saying how things are going to be. It may not happen in our lifetime. This whole transmigration, that's a scary thought for me, where my brain is controlled by a machine. Even though it looks so promising at so many levels, that'll be the last straw for me, where machines control my mind. And freedom is another big thing. How free are we if we are controlled by a machine? So these are some interesting philosophical debates that kind of outwork itself from Cyberpunk. Because, when Blade Runner, if you watch the movie Blade Runner, that novel was written in probably Do Sheep Dream of Android by Philip Dick. That was written somewhere in the 50s or 60s, if I'm not mistaken. But then in the movie imagines how life will be in 2019. When they wrote, it was 50 years for them. And now we are in 2020, and things have not happened like that. Now we talk about humanoid, but that's about it. We don't have replicants who mix with our communities and families, pretending to look alike, like our friend. So it hasn't come that far, but they kind of imagine. Who knows what's going to happen? But one thing we can be sure is science and technology is not going anywhere. And we can like it, we can dislike it, we can be threatened by science, but this is the new reality. And this is where, should the scientists be cautious? Of course, yes. They need to be careful, they need to be watchful. They have to have these kind of debates, ethical debates. Bioethics is a big topic, but will they do it? I don't know. I can't answer for that. And 40 years, 50 years, technology would have grown, and we would have been, many of us, would have become a better cyborg. And at least I hope, we have immunized against COVID, and we can go back to our normal lives and, go back to the way it was. And that's the hope for, science and technology can be good as well. So you never know.
Okay, thank you. There is Meenakshi Bhavar asking, can we say magic realism is also a kind of science?
Oh, no, magical realism, I would say it's more imaginative, it's more cultural. It's once again, magic and realism that are brought together and are not treated any different. And say, for example, magical realism happens in certain cultures where magic is part of reality. So I don't see anything scientific there in magical realism, but it's more cultural, it's more geographical, I would say, especially if you see Native American. I teach Native American studies as well, so you see a lot of magical realism in their stories, because magic is part of their life, and it forms a very fabric of their thinking. So who am I to come and say, no, it's not real? It may not be real from my scientific, realistic viewpoint, but from their cultural point of view, it is very real. Magic is as real as reality. But there is no science there, and probably this is where I think science fiction is a little different. It's not just imaginative, but it also involves science to some degree. And the classic example would be Rajnikanth movie as well as Matrix. Rajnikanth is Rajnikanth because of imagination, because of a culture. People kind of buy into this Rajnikanth hype, and as opposed to sci-fi, where it is science that mediates, science that enhances a human being. So similarities, but totally different.
Can we take 2 more questions? There are 2 more questions. I'll read them out. There is Bhima Gowda Patil asking, please share the list of novels on cybernetics.
Yeah, Cyberpunk. I just had this on the slide. I can go back and read it for you.
Okay.
William Gibson is a very important.
Share your PPT.
Yeah, I can share that.
Good. We will mail it to them.
Absolutely, I will do that.
Okay. So we'll take one last question. Sir, there's Anna Maria Woman Matthew asking, sir, can you please speak that where does the post-human condition leave humanity?
Once again, this is a highly philosophical question. What is humanity? What makes us human? We got to start there. And if the way we feel, the way we think, and the way we behave, if that's what makes us human beings, then the question, if a machine is able to think like we think, feel what we feel, and behave like we do, if a machine is able to do that, then our humanity is seriously challenged. Where do we draw the line? And everything else is a cosmetic change. How we look, what kind of hair we have, what kind of a dress we wear, and how we speak. Those are cosmetic differences. But at the heart of it, what makes us human being? This consciousness, this memory, be able to make a choice, empathy. And that's what makes us human beings at the heart of it. Be able to love somebody, to love and be loved. That's the heart of human emotion. Everything is tied to that basic value. And once again, go back and watch Blade Runner. You see a replicant wanting to be loved, and that's how the movie ends. The movie ends when a replicant behaves like a human being. They kiss and they elope. So where do you draw the line? How do you say a machine is not a human being anymore? So I know it sounds a little far-fetched, but that's where they take it to. That's the extreme Cyberpunk imagines humanity to go with science and technology. We talked about contact lenses, we talked about plastic surgeries, we talked about immunization. The only thing that is left is our nervous system and our cognitive ability, our brain and our nervous system. But the question is, how long? How long can they be untouched by science? Brain, is still a lot of uncharted territory there. But if they're able to decode how a brain works, if they're able to control a brain, if they're able to surgically implant a chip that controls everything, then are we machines or are we still human beings? Because if that is the seed of emotion, if that is what controls who we are and how we act, how we interact with each other, be able to live in a society, in a community, have meaningful relationships with each other. If that itself is threatened and being controlled by an artificial system, then we need to ask ourselves, how am I, not a machine? And where does it lead to? I know it leads to all these ethical issues, but it is threatened, and that's what cyberpunk writers, they want to explore these. They want to go as far as they can go and explore the endless possibilities that cyberpunk offers.
Okay, thank you. Before I move on to the formal vote of thanks, let me tell the participants, please fill in the feedback forms. We'll mail you the PPT as well as the details of the certificate. So a quick word of thanks to everyone. The resource person of the day, Solomon Rees Nelson, our principal, Dr. Gigi Jonama Xavier, distinguished faculty members and research scholars from various institutions across the globe, my dear friend, Dr. Ashwita Maria Antony, retired faculty members, Ms. Jayalakshmi ma'am and Fatima ma'am from our department, and colleagues from my department. We have been transported into an alien world through the human experiment in cyberpunk. Solomon Rees Nelson, who's affectionately addressed as Solo by his friends, us friends, has been generous enough to accept my request to deliver the lecture today. He was my senior in Pondicherry University during my PhD, and we worked under the same supervisor, Dr. Sujata. On behalf of the department, I thank Dr. Solomon Rees for sharing his thoughts with us. For me, it was more like reliving my Pondi days because with Solo and Ashwita joining the same meeting room. Thank you. Let me place on record my immense gratitude to our dear principal, Reverend Dr. Gigi Jonama Xavier, who has always been supportive and joined us today, even amidst a busy schedule. Though she has left the meeting room, I thank her on behalf of the department. The retired teachers of our department inspire us and guide us in all endeavors. Thank you, Fatima ma'am and Jayalakshmi ma'am, for joining us. I thank our HOD, Dr. Lema Antony, senior faculty members of the department, Ms. Lindsay Joseph and Dr. Milan France for their support. The wonderful hosts today, my colleagues Shruti, Saumi, Shiba, request special mention for their assistance. Thank you, Dr. Mini, Diana, Jasmine, and research scholars and PG scholars of the department for joining the lecture. And my dear colleague, Ranjita, designed the poster and certificate. Thank you, Ranjita. And I thank my colleague, Ms. Srija, with whom I coordinated this lecture, for her timely reminders and suggestions. The faculty members and research scholars across the globe have made the webinar successful. Thank you for your questions and deliberations. Thank you, dear participants, for joining us. Wish you all a wonderful day ahead. And for my friend, for the friends who've joined us from the other side of the globe, maybe it's good night. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks again, and thanks for having me, and thanks for listening.
We enjoyed your talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It was very enlightening. Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot.
Yes,
really enjoyed. But I don't think there's something for us to be frightened of the future. The future becomes a normal. Okay. Just like our old ancestors were frightened about smartphone, and now so we walk around, we travel, we communicate, so like that. Now technology is going to enter the inside the human beings, and as far as human beings exist, the feelings will be there. That's what I always feel. So let us not get out of the future generation. Let us be with them and move with them and enjoy that. Thank you. Thanks a lot very much. You gave us new openings. And as far as we teachers are concerned, we can convey a lot of your messages to our students, making them feel about like human beings, even when they are with the machines. Thank you very much. Thank you, Liz. You did a wonderful job.
Yeah, thank you,
ma'am. One of the participants has asked for the mail ID of resource person.
Okay. Has he left the meeting room? I'll ask him before we share it in the chat box.
Hello, Fatima.
I think he has just left.
Hello, Fatima ma'am. Hello, Jayalakshmi ma'am.
Yes.
I am Anjana.
Hi, Anjana. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine, ma'am. I'm fine.
From where are you now?
Yeah, I'm working in the college, Sri Shankara College, Kaladi.
Ah, Anjana.
Ma'am, you're still there, no?
Yeah.
You are still
existing, yes.
Yes. No, not like that, no, ma'am. I'm asking, aren't you working there? what is it? GPC Dayas College. GPC.
Yeah,
I didn't get the name.
I just took it a jovial way, joking way, you know, when
I'm
because
don't
of
think
the
don't.
technology.
I didn't
When
get
the
the
time
name.
is there, I said I'm still existing. Okay. I'm working in SEMS, Anjana.
Yeah. SCMS, yeah, SCMS. I didn't get the name
And
suddenly.
now we are having online classrooms and things are going on fine. A lot of technology. The new students have come, and each year a new student comes. It's like teaching a new generation.
Yes. So nice to see you. Jayalakshmi ma'am also. Hello, Jayalakshmi ma'am. Jayalakshmi ma'am കേൾക്കുന്നില്ല.
Please, she is not mute. She's not unmuted. Jaya,
Jayalakshmi ma'am, can you hear me? ഞാൻ അഞ്ജനയാണ്. See, when I hear you, when I see you, I am reminded of the old valuation days, ma'am.
Yes,
When we were all juniors sitting.
right.
We are all very silent.
Oh, you are not silent, Anjana. You are really a good resource person. At that time itself, I used to look up to you.
Oh, no.
Huh?
No, it was really nice, you know. I still miss all those days.
Really?
Yeah, really. And I remember also.
Yeah, I also remember you. I remember you as a young lady. Okay, not. I do not know how you look today.
No, ma'am,
I think can make ourselves look young, right?
No, ma'am, I have got gray hair and very looking much older than you, I think.
Oh.
My attire is also very bad.
I will be able to recognize you.
Yeah, attire is also very bad. Yesterday I sat up late in the night because I had to post some videos, you know, for